Hello, I am Bryson Panas, Senior Government Affairs Director at OAR.
And I'm Will Roberts, Government Affairs Director.
And we're happy to have you join us for the Friday Top 5, where we take a look at what's happening around the Oklahoma State Capitol as well as in realtor politics around the nation. Up today, we have a few things we want to dive into. We have a national focus on what's happening there, a few things that have happened at the state government overall, and then also some priority legislation that we want to dive into to keep you guys up to date on what we're working on up there. So without further ado, let's dive into the national stuff. First up, we have Super Tuesday. Super Tuesday occurred earlier this week on Tuesday, where we had a majority of states going through their presidential primary elections for each respective party. I think the results were as expected. Both you and I spoke about this, and it looks like Trump and Biden both came out with a little bit of surprises here and there. I don't know if it's a surprise, but essentially Trump will be the nominee for the Republicans, as well as President Biden for the Democrat nomination.
Yeah, and you saw like Nikki Haley win Vermont, but overall there were, most of the states went the way that we expected, which was Trump won most of them and Biden won most of them. You saw Dean Phillips drop out for the Democrats and endorse Biden, so it's sort of a two-horse race at this point.
And I will say, I believe one of our counties in the Panhandle, which would have been the Cimarron County, I believe, did vote for Dean Phillips in the Democratic primary. So that was a county in Oklahoma that he did pick up. Interesting spot there I saw yesterday. We also saw Thursday afternoon, or evening, I should say, it was actually like 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, I think, but the State of the Union address from President Biden. I think overall, my takeaways were a lot of discussion I heard. Democrats said, speech good. Republicans said, speech bad. Is there much more to say on that?
No, and the president, kind of gets his last hurrah heading into the campaign season. Democrats are going to be hanging their hats on the last 4 years, and obviously Republicans will be hanging their hats on that as well. So, should be an interesting November.
Yes, and that brings us to election season. Election season now officially is kicked off in my mind. I think we have platforms being, laid out on the federal level for Republicans and Democrats, but also here on the state level have quite a few seats for our Senate and House up. Our governor is not. However, we will see everything ramp up, I think, here locally, as well as the commercials and everything that everyone hears, social media, whatever, will be ramping up. So welcome to election season, I think is our takeaway there. Second up, we have our state government. A little bit here, a change or I guess not a change, but a change coming, and a little bit of clarity for next year on that. But we have Kyle Hilbert was announced or voted in as Speaker Designate for the House of Representatives starting next year. What are your thoughts on that, though, Will?
Yeah, we've got Speaker Designate Hilbert, who is the pro tem of the House until next year. He'll be 30 in 2 weeks. He'll be the youngest speaker in Oklahoma State history. He was first elected in 2016. And so, we're looking forward to it. Representative Hilbert's a great member. And obviously the Republican caucus has a lot of faith in him. And as you all know, Senator McCourtney was elected Senate leader. So as Senator Treat terms out next year, he'll kind of accede to that post as well. So whole new crop of leadership starting next session.
Yeah, we've seen a little bit of our bills, or all the bills, move through the legislature in a little bit different way this year, because we do see a complete leadership change, and everyone knows that's happening because they're terming out. And so we have, maybe opportunity, maybe strategy, maybe a lot playing out this year, but it's looked a little bit different on our state side as far as what's moving through and at what pace than what we saw last year. So maybe that's a good segue into our priority legislation. We have two bills that are still very much on the path to success, have made it through the House, the original floor, and then the other one still waiting here next week. But let's touch first on HB 3255. This is our HOA bill.
Yeah, House Bill 3255 with Representative Mike Osborne. That bill cleared the floor after it went through House Business and Commerce. We're waiting for a hearing in Senate Business and Commerce. That'll be with Senator Seifried. It went through resoundingly on the House side, so we expect it to go pretty well, and we've had some good conversations with some industry partners on what that bill will ultimately look like. We think we'll be able to get it through, get some good transparency requirements on the books for those HOAs.
Yeah, and that, a lot of good stuff this week, I think. We had really early on the floor and got that through. We've since heard from a lot, I don't know, more input from our industry partners, even some out-of-state trade associations and other associations that we've been able to work with, but really looking at maybe a 1 to 3 year sort of robust overhaul of like the professional development level of third-party companies that want to manage HOAs, or even, I don't know, other scenarios where we just want to make sure that our homeowners associations are best serving the property owner, and then reciprocally we can kind of protect that industry as it becomes more professionalized over the coming years. The last 10 years have been pretty crazy with that. I think we've seen a lot from North Texas spilling over into us, as well as some of the other large metro or suburban areas that really have this industry as something frankly new to Oklahoma. So I'm glad to be a part of that moving forward. We also have Senate Bill 1920 with Senator Racino, and this is our buyer broker disclosure bill. But tell us a little more on that as well, Will.
Yeah, Senate Bill 1920 got through Senate Judiciary, so we're going to wait to see that on the Senate floor in the next week or so. We do have a House author on that, Representative Anthony Moore. Many of you guys know Representative Moore. He is a real estate attorney, well versed in these issues, and obviously we have Senator Racino, who's a Realtor member and a great advocate for our causes. So we feel like we're in a really good spot with Senate Bill 1920, and it should be kind of put a bow on everything that's happened with the federal lawsuit over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and really the nuts and bolts of this are just that it requires brokers in existing law of broker sort of law statute there, that you do disclose in writing compensation, and that agreement is valid for no longer than a year, default of 60 days if not disclosed, but should provide, or at least provide a foundation, I guess, moving forward as we see the industry change from some of those federal sort of implications or pressures coming down. Well, that's very good. Let's move on to number 4, our special attention legislation, or things that popped up over the week that we have been tracking, we've been working with. A lot of intricacies in this certain situation, but we are going to talk about a little bit of foreign land ownership in a bill that really took off that we worked with at the beginning, SB 1705, and this we worked with industry partners to sort of clarify what went through last year, but what can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, Senate Bill 1705, as everybody knows, we've been talking about this foreign land thing for, it's really been 2 or 3 years now. They're trying to finally get their hands around everything at the legislature. As Bryson said, we've worked with OLTA, with a couple of other groups, to try to get a good sense of what we want the foreign land landscape to look like. Senate Bill 1705 will make sure that bona fide residents, which this is language that originated in Senate Bill 212 from last year, will still be able to purchase land in this state. And what we mean by a bona fide resident is someone who has taken up residency, who intends to reside on land that they purchase. So regardless of their immigration status, like if they have an I-10 number, then they would be able to purchase land.
And that's how it stands right now, for sure.
Right.
Because we're definitely watching that definition of resident, permanent resident, bona fide resident, who may or may not be able to purchase or shall plan on purchasing land, even in Oklahoma. And so this bill looks good now, but I do think that we have maybe more to come here. We have hit some deadlines in the legislature. Looks like maybe we won't have a whole lot of motion on this issue moving forward outside of this bill, but definitely a piece of it we're watching there is the bona fide resident thing, and how we can actually preserve, I guess, everyone's sort of right to own property in Oklahoma, which was big for us last year. So a couple other notables we have. HB 3318/SB 1763 deals with really service agreements and how long those can be I guess, agreed upon or what is allowed, and it limits it to 1 year. What more can you tell us about that?
So Senate Bill 1763 with Senator Coleman and House Bill 3318 with Representative Steve Bayshore. Those are separate bills that will eventually have to that they'll have to get married, essentially. Each has passed their respective House. As many of you know about these service agreements, what we're trying to combat here is those 40-year listing agreements that have kind of cropped up over the last couple of years. Basically, you give money to, you receive money from someone in exchange for an agreement to list your property for an indefinite period of time, or maybe 40 years, or however long the defined term would be. What this legislation does is it shrinks it down to a single year, so that folks aren't being tied to the land or prevented from selling their property after that 1 year is up.
Yep, and both of these bills have passed each respective floor, so we have a scenario where we might go to conference, we might have an amendment given one way or the other. I think a few things for our membership we've talked about, and for our realtors and frankly other groups. Sometimes we have agreements that are needed to be made for maybe a state or federal grant, development project. It needs to be longer than a year, so limiting those to a year might present a problem, and I think that's the area where we're looking to maybe see some amendments in. But if any of you all out there have anything that you can tell us about that or give us feedback, please reach out, because we would love to pass that along to the lawmakers. And finally, we will go into sort of a bill that popped up, not out of nowhere, but I think it's good for the industry, HB 3159, and this has to deal with the Landowner's Bill of Rights, which has actually been in our state statute for quite a while now, but deals with eminent domain.
Yeah, so House Bill 3159, basically what this does is it gives a right of first refusal for properties that have been taken through eminent domain. So let's say that you have a property that gets taken in the eminent domain process. If that is then sold by the state after the state decides that they don't need that property anymore, then the original party who had that land taken from them by the government would have the right of first refusal on the purchase. So basically what it would do is it would say you either get the lesser of the original purchase price or whatever the current value of the property is. So you would get the better of the two deals. It's really a way to kind of restore those property rights to folks that have had their property taken, through the eminent domain process. So ultimately a really good bill by Representative Eric Roberts, also a Realtor member. So we appreciate him for running that.
Yeah, and again, that is a bill that's amended. This is a small section about that right of first refusal from the original owner. And so a lot of that has already been in statute for years and we've operated under. So no worries on additional eminent domain sort of jurisdiction being thrown in this one. Well, that's about it for this time. We appreciate you guys for watching and joining us, and we will continue our work at the Capitol. But until a further time, we say adios.
Thank you.